Hello Year 7, welcome to the last lesson of week 4 of Coraline. I hope you've enjoyed your lessons this week. I hope you're nicely settled into your routine and you don't even need to look at the top tips. If you feel like you've got a little bit disorganised, you've slipped and you've got a few bad habits, why don't you check? No. Why don't you check the top tips in the corner up there, okay? And don't forget the most important tip of all, remember to hand in your work, okay? Whether it's at the end of the lesson, whether it's the end of the week, go to your assignment on Teams, click on it to view it, go to the paperclip and attach your work and click hand in and you get that fancy little animation that should pop down to make sure you know that you've handed it in. Okay, let's rock and roll. Mirrors in Fairy Tales is your title for today. Underline it, write it neatly, and today's date, which hopefully will be Monday, the 25th of January, if you're on the ball. It might not be. Pause the video to do that. Okay, so we're going to look at 3 words, which are our key vocabulary for the lesson today. So a little subtitle, key vocabulary. And the first word is symbol. You'll be looking at symbols throughout your English lessons at King James's School. Okay, we're going to start you off in year 7. Start as we mean to go on. So what is a symbol in stories in literature? Have a think if you want. Ask somebody in your house, what's a symbol? You get symbols in maths, it's not the same. Okay, here we are. So I want you to write this definition in your book or your Word document, whatever it is you're writing on. It's a thing that represents something else, especially an object representing something that isn't physical. And if you sat there thinking, I don't know what that means, I have an example for you underneath. The limousine, big long fancy car that you might end up going to your prom in, hopefully, was a symbol of his wealth and authority. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and write down the definition of symbol, and if you want to, if you need it, you can write down the example underneath and press play when you're ready to go. Okay, second word is portal. You may have heard of the word, particularly if you're a fan of a certain famous series of books. Depending on what computer games you play, you may have been aware of the word as well. So what's a portal? You may be telling me the answer now, can't hear you, sorry. It is a doorway, a gate or other entrance, especially a large and imposing one. Okay, so write the definition down for portal, pause the video to do that and press play when you are ready. Okay, so the last word for our key vocabulary that I'm going to want you to use in the lesson later on is psychic. Doesn't look like you would say it like that, psychic, but I've put in square brackets at the side, pronounced psychic. Okay, psychic. What does it mean? What does psychic mean? It means having a special ability in being able to predict what will happen in the future or know what people are thinking. It's not an ability I've got, and I don't think I'd really want one. I'm not sure I know what's going to happen. I don't want to know. I'll just see what happens. And I don't think I really want to know what people are thinking either. Okay, so pause the video, write those definitions down and press play when you are ready, Year 7. Okay, so we need another table like last lesson today. Ruler, if you are doing it in your exercise book, make sure it's neat. Don't want squiggly lines for your table. Okay, the Y column, this one, is going to need some sentences in it. So it needs to be bigger than the last one from last lesson. Okay, so I suggest about half a page in your exercise book. Obviously, if you're working on Word, then you can extend it as you go along. Okay, so pause the video to draw this table in your book neatly, and then press play when you are ready to continue. Right, so I'm going to bring up 4 images that are symbols. They represent something that isn't physical. And I want you to think, what might those images that are symbols be representing? So I'm going to bring up the images first. If you are stuck, I'm going to be bringing up the answers that you can match up. So if you don't want the clue, make sure you pause the video when I give you the little warning. Okay, so the 4 images that are all symbols are a snake, a butterfly, a storm, and roses. So if they represent something else, if they're a symbol for something else, what might it be? If you want to have a go without the clues, you need to pause the video now. If you need a clue, I'm going to bring up the answers and you need to match them up to the pictures. Okay, so which ones are they a symbol for? Okay, so what you need to do now is you need to have a think what we've got there. We've got change and transformation. You've all seen the Transformers turn into something else. Power, strength and God's anger. Evil, sin and temptation. Love and romance. So which one might be which? Okay, if you did it without the clues, have a look at your answers. Readdress them if you need to. And let's have a look at how we're going to match them up. Okay, so the answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. There we go. So we've got the snake represents evil, sin and temptation. A butterfly represents change and transformation. A storm represents power, strength and God's anger. And the roses represent love and romance. So I want you to put these in your table and I'll show you how on the next slide. So your table needs to look like this. There we go. Okay, obviously you can't put the pictures in there. You can draw a little picture if you want. Draw yourself a little snake or a butterfly. That's okay. But make sure you put the words as well. So pause the video to complete your table like that so far. And then press play when you're ready to move on, Year 7. Okay, so what I want us to think now, Year 7, is why do they represent these things? Why is a snake a symbol for evil, sin and temptation? Why is a storm a symbol for power, strength and God's anger? Okay, so we're going to go through each one and I'm going to ask you some questions and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video and have a think. Okay, and then eventually I'm going to bring up some ideas and then afterwards we'll complete our table. So, a snake. Evil, sin and temptation. I want you to think about a very, very, very famous book and a story that was in that book and someone who turned into a snake and made 2 people do something really bad. Can you think what it was? Pause the video if you want a little moment. If you want to ask anybody in your house, see if they know. What do we think it was? You don't need to write the answer down that's coming up, we'll put it in our table in a moment. What is it? The answer's coming up in 3, 2, 1. It's the Bible, and it was the devil, if you remember. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. And in the Bible, the devil turned into a snake, because he could do that, and he went into the Garden of Eden where Adam and Eve were. They weren't allowed to eat the forbidden fruit, that's why it was forbidden. And he said to them, "Oh, why don't you take a bite out of that juicy apple? It looks really tasty." And he tempted them into doing it. and they did, and that was their sin. Naughty Adam and Eve. So snakes are therefore always a symbol of being tempted and the devil and sins. Okay, little bit of a more obvious one, a butterfly. Change and transformation. Why might a butterfly be a symbol for change and transformation? Very beautiful butterflies, very important, got to look after them. Why is that? Okay, the answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Starts off as a caterpillar, turns into a chrysalis, that husk that it goes into, and then it transforms into a butterfly. So because of the life cycle of the butterfly, we always use butterflies to symbolise change and transformation. So if we're trying to get people to think about change and transforming, we might put butterfly in something. Okay, next one, a storm. Power, strength, God's anger. Why? Why is that? Might just be raining. Pause the video if you want to have a think. Ask somebody in your house. What's all that about? Answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. Well, they can be very destructive, can't they? We've had some really bad weather so far with the rain, floods. It's got the power to destroy things. Really destructive can nature be. It can be wonderful, but it can be really destructive. And people used to believe, before we were very scientific, before we had all the knowledge that we had and the computers that can work out where the weather's coming from and what causes the weather, people used to believe that storms were a punishment from God, that God used to send the storms to us. It doesn't. It's just the weather. Okay, so the last one then. Roses. Why are they a symbol of love and romance? There's all sorts we could go into this. Very complicated. I'm not going to make it complicated for you. What do you think? Why are roses a symbol of love and romance? Well, the answers are coming up in 3, 2, 1. They're traditionally given as a token of love. They're a colour red, and red is a symbol of love. Okay. Do lots of things about colour symbolism. In English, you might have done some so far. Right, so what I want you to do is to pop those into your table. So on the next slide, I want your table to look like this. There we go. So pause the video and complete your table and press play when you are ready to move on, Year 7. Right, so now we need to look at mirrors. Now we know what symbols are, we want to look at mirrors. What might mirrors symbolise? I'm going to bring up some questions for you, okay? What can they do? What can't they do? And what's unusual about them? I want you to do a little brainstorm in your book. Write the word mirrors, okay? We're going to have about 5 or 6 things around this word, okay? So you can pause the video and have a think about those questions, and you can press play when you're ready to go. Right, what did you get then? What can they do? Well, they're reflective. They can reflect, they can show you what you can't see. I can't see my face, but they can show me my face. Show me if I've got my breakfast around my face before I set off to work in the morning. What else can they do? They can't lie. No. Fortunately, can't make me look any better than I really want to. What else can they do? Can't they do? Can't lie. They're reflective. They show a reverse image, don't they? What we see in the mirror is a reverse image. It's flipped. One more thing. It's an image that's the same, but it's different. You might have got that instead of reverse image. Okay, so pause the video. If If you want to add anything down, you might have got some other things. You might have got some different things. Well done. Right. What do some people believe about mirrors? What are some beliefs? You might not be aware of these. This might be new information for you. You can always ask somebody in your house if you want. You could think about the key vocabulary you've got written down. That might give you a clue. Okay, what have we got then? Some people believe they are a portal to another world. Might start making you think of some stories there we're going to look at. One more thing, what do other people believe about mirrors? Some people believe that mirrors can predict the future and that you can read minds through mirrors. I don't think you can through mine. Okay, one last thing about beliefs about mirrors. People with psychic abilities, there's our last key vocabulary look, use mirrors. So if you went to a psychic, they would most probably be having a mirror on their table or in their little toolkit. Okay, so pause the video, Year 7, to jot down any ideas that you've not got on your brainstorm. Well done. Right. Stories that have used mirrors. Just before we get on to Coraline's mirror, what other stories do you know that have used mirrors? You can pause the video before I bring up some clues. If you don't want the clues, you can do this as a brainstorm. You can do it as a list. We're going to look at the stories. I'm going to ask it to think of the names, and then I'm going to ask you what the mirrors do in those stories. Okay? I've got it as a little brainstorm, but you can do it how you like. Right, if you don't want a clue, I'm going to bring up 4 images in 3, 2, 1. Image number 1. Image number 2. Image number 3. And image number 4. Okay, so pause the video. What stories are those? Okay, what did you get? Hopefully you know these ones. We've got Snow White. We've got Harry Potter. We've got Shrek. And we've got Alice Through the Looking Glass. Right, so pause the video because we're going to look at those 4 stories. So add those to yours if you had any different ones. What else can we look at? We need to look at how those mirrors are used. So I want you to think about the mirrors in each of those stories. If you're not sure about the mirror in those stories, ask someone in your house. Ask them, what's the mirror in Harry Potter? There must be somebody in your house who's read Harry Potter or Alice Through the Looking Glass. I'm sure you know Snow White, and I'm sure you've watched Shrek. Okay, so pause the video, and if you can just write down, how is that mirror used in those 4 stories? And when you're ready, press play and we'll check what you've got. Okay, so Snow White. How does the writer use the mirror in Snow White? Well, the queen, evil queen, asks, who is the fairest in the land? And the mirror is unable to lie to her, always tells her the truth, until Snow White grows up into a beautiful woman, and then of course it can't tell her that it's she who is the fairest in the land. Okay, so pause the video if you need to write that down. What about Harry Potter? How is the mirror used in that? Can you remember? It's the mirror of erased. If you wonder why it's called that, look at the word backwards. It shows a person's most desperate desire. What does that person want in the whole world most of all? But if the person who looked in the mirror is really truly happy and doesn't actually want anything more, it'll just show themselves. So when Harry Potter looks in the mirror, the one thing that he really truly wants to see are his parents, who he lost. So it shows him his parents. It's quite sad. Okay. Right then, Shrek. The mirror in Shrek. It's called the magic mirror. And again, like Snow White, it cannot lie. He grills it. He goes and steals it. And Lord Farquaad asks it how he can become king. And it basically tells him that you can't become king without a princess. So therefore, that's then how he goes about and seeks Princess Fiona. Okay, Alice through the looking glass then. Think of your key vocabulary. How is Alice through the looking glass using a mirror? It's a portal to another world. She steps through the looking glass to another world that's similar but very different to the one she was in. The room is the same as the one that she steps through. It's got all the same features like a chessboard, but the pieces on the chessboard are alive. So it's similar but very, very different. Okay, so jot those ideas down because you're going to use them later on. Year 7. Pause the video and then press play when you're ready to go. Right, Coraline's mirror. What do we know about Coraline's mirror? I've taken 2 extracts from the book that we read last lesson. I'm going to read them out and I'm going to ask you a few short questions on them so we can compare Coraline's mirror to mirrors in other stories. Okay, so the first little extract says, Coraline walked down the hallway until she reached the mirror at the end. There was nothing reflected in it but a young girl in her dressing gown and slippers who looked like she had really recently been crying, but whose eyes were real eyes, not black buttons, and who was holding tightly to a burned out candle in a candlestick. She looked at the girl in the mirror and the girl in the mirror looked back at her. Okay, then just slightly later on in the story, the other mother pulls out the mirror and it says, I'll prove it, said the other mother, and brushed the surface of the mirror with her long white fingers. It clouded over as if a dragon had breathed on it, and then it cleared. In the mirror was daytime already. Coraline was looking at the hallway all the way down to her front door. The door opened from the outside and Coraline's mother and father walked inside. They carried suitcases. That was a fine holiday, said Coraline's father. How nice it is not to have Coraline anymore, said her mother with a happy smile. Now we can do all the things we've always wanted to do, like go abroad, but we were prevented from doing by having a little daughter. And, said her father, I take great comfort in knowing that her other mother will take better care of her than we ever could. The mirror fogged and faded and reflected the night once more. Okay, so we've included the extract of the first bit on the screen, and there are 6 questions in total. First 3 are on this extract, and I'm going to bring the questions up and I want you to answer them in full sentences. So capital letter, full stop, writing them carefully and neatly in your book or on your Word document. Okay, so first question. Where is the mirror located? Second question. What does Coraline see in the mirror? And third question, in your own words, describe the girl's appearance and what she does. Okay, pause the video and complete those questions and press play when you're ready to move on. Right, the last 3 questions then are on the second extract and the questions are coming up. How does the other mother use the mirror? So it's a how question. So you need to write a little explanation of how she uses it. What does she do with the mirror? Question 5. What's unusual about the mirror? What does this mirror do that other mirrors don't do? Number 6, comparing it to the other mirrors that we've looked at in the lesson earlier. What similarities or differences are there between this mirror and mirrors in other stories? Okay, so pause the video and write those answers to those questions in full sentences, and then press play when you're ready and we'll check the answers that you've got. Okay, year 7, so let's check your answers and what you got. So you need to have a look at my answers on the screen, and you need to have a look at what you wrote and see if you got something similar. You can always adapt your answers and improve them if you need to. So where is the mirror located? Well, if you look at the extract, it was down the hallway and the mirror was at the end. So the mirror is located at the end of the hallway. Full stop and capital letter, make sure we've got. All right, second question was, what does Coraline see in the mirror? Coraline sees a young girl in the mirror. She doesn't see herself. It's a different young girl. You may have got something slightly different to that, as long as you haven't written that she sees herself in the mirror. Okay, now question number 3. Now you may have, depending on how you pause a video, you may have included, excuse me, some details from number 3 and number 2, so that's okay. Question number 3 was in your own words. Describe the girl's appearance and what she does. So I have written in my answer, the young girl is dressed in a dressing gown and slippers as if she's just got up from bed. She looks upset and has been crying. She hasn't got button for eyes like the other parents. She's holding a burned out candle and is looking at Coraline like she can see her through the mirror. So if you want to see if you've got those different bits of detail about what she's wearing, her eyes, what she's holding, and that she's looking at Coraline like she can see her, like the mirror's transparent in some way. Okay, pause the video to check your answers, to do any improvements if you need to, and then press play when you're ready. Okay, so the last 3 questions then. How does the other mother use the mirror? Well, she uses a mirror to make Coraline think her parents don't love her anymore. She shows them an image of them coming back from a holiday without her, saying what a lovely time they'd had. It's not very nice, is it? It's definitely not true. What's unusual about the mirror? The mirror clouds over when the other mother touches it, and it can change and show visions of different worlds. It's not like mine in my bathroom where it just shows me looking a mess when I get out of bed in the morning. Okay, so you may have got a slightly different answer to mine for number 5, depending on how you phrased it. But something about the fog and the faded, that's what I was looking for. And showing an unreal world, a different world, something that doesn't exist. Okay, last question. This was a tough one because this is comparing things, and that's a difficult skill. Okay, so you're having to go back to the beginning of the lesson, think about the other stories, and then come back to Coraline. So what did we get? This mirror is different to other mirrors because it lies. Coraline's parents do love her. They wouldn't go on holiday without her and enjoy it. Okay, Coraline's parents do love her, but it is similar in that a villain uses it to do evil, like in Snow White. Okay, you might have got something different, something similar. So this is really important that you upload this work in your assignment so we can see what kind of things you've put, because I'd love to see what kind of similarities and differences you thought of to do with Coraline's mirror. Okay, hope you found that interesting, Year 7. I've really enjoyed this lesson. I thought it was fascinating. Okay. Very good Bitmoji, I thought there. Look at that. The mirror, get it? I know, fantastic. Okay, well done. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed this week. I'm loving Coraline. It's one of my favourite books ever. Okay, so have a lovely weekend. Stay safe and we'll see you next week. Bye.